Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Bill Forry.
Here in the house.
Linda Dorcena Forry.
I'm here.
Publishers of the Dorchester Reporter, celebrating 40 years. Welcome to The Common.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
Let's clap.
Appreciate it.
Come on.
Yeah, we should clap. Thank you, Daryl.
Listen, so we got you here because we want to talk all about the Dorchester Reporter and its 40 years. We want to take a look back at the Reporter's impact on Boston over the decades and what's in store for the future. So, Bill, start with you. Take us back to the beginning of the Reporter as best you can, because your father, Ed, and your mother, Mary, started this paper. So tell us about those early days.
Well, the very earliest days of the Reporter, I saw up close and personal because it took place and unfolded in our living room, in our dining room, and our kitchen, and in what used to be my sister's bedroom, because I think they gave her the boot for that few months when we got started. So I was 10, and my sister was 5. My father, who had been working in community journalism for about a decade or so as a columnist for a different newspaper in Dorchester at the time, got laid off from his 9-to-5 gig.
Okay.
And this is in 1983, of course, 40 years ago. And was kind of trying to figure things out and decide, what's my passion? What do I really care about? And Dorchester obviously was one. Feeding his family was another, and obviously his love of journalism. And this was a confluence of events that led to my parents deciding, there's a void in this media market here in Dorchester, in this part of Boston. We don't feel represented in the coverage we're seeing elsewhere. And they decided to just set out on their own. So they started in September 1983 with a bare bones staff of themselves, basically, and both of their kids pitching in here and there, and a handful of other volunteers, really. So they got their start. They put out their first edition, and right on the cover of that one, which we have in our commemorative edition, is, the big headline of the day, cable TV is coming to Dorchester.
Oh, man.
And that was like the screaming headline. My dad was really amped about getting cable. I mean, this man wanted his New England cable news. He wanted his Nesson. He wanted his Red Sox on TV. Yep. And, me and my sister, we wanted our MTV at the time. So we were all amped about getting cable television. Yeah. That was the kind of stories they were doing, very much over the back fence kind of stories, the stuff that they were talking to their neighbors about.
Yep.
But those are the very, very early days. And there's a lot of nostalgia involved in this commemorative edition, in part because my mom is no longer with us. She passed away in 2004.
The commemorative edition that celebrates the 40th anniversary that I'm looking at right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. I was reading the 25th anniversary piece. Mm-hmm. It mentioned in there that, this was kind of a product of a midlife crisis or something. It worked out, obviously.
Yeah. But it was a tough time in that economy. 1983 was not a good time to not have a job. Mm-hmm. And unemployment was pretty high, and there was just not a lot of prospects for people. Boston in that era, and I think we can forget this from this vantage point, was a pretty depressed place. And neighborhoods like Dorchester in particular, supermarkets were closing, food deserts all over the place. And there still are in parts, but, it was not a thriving economy in 1983. So
this was a big risk for him.
It was a big risk, and it was also an act of courage, but also in some respects, desperation of, okay, if not now, when? And if not us, who? And so they took that risk, and honestly, it has paid off.
Yeah. Now, Linda,
yes,
you grew up in Dorchester.
Yes, I did.
Tell me about the memories you have of the Reporter growing up.
So I grew up in Upham's Corner. I'm first-generation American. My parents immigrated here from Haiti.
Hey, and Bill's, right?
Oh, na boule piti piti. What you know about that, Daryl?
a little bit. That's about it. That's about the gist.
We'll work on that.
We'll work on that. We'll get you some grillon bun and pizza and everything, and you'll be good.
All right, bet.
And I do remember, seeing the Dorchester Reporter. And I think what's incredible about this paper is that it's highlighting, the largest neighborhood in our great city, the most diverse neighborhood in our city is Dorchester. And I think to be able to cover that and the work that Bill and the family has been able to do over the years has been quite incredible, right? Lifting up voices of communities that sometimes felt left out.
Yep.
And so for me, I'm just really thrilled now. So going backwards too, I should talk about I was actually a former state rep and state senator here in Boston in Dorchester, Mattapan. And when I first ran, people were like, oh my gosh, Linda, there's 4 newspapers, like they're just going to endorse you. Like, they're just going to be with you. But it was quite amazing the work that my husband did in the team to really show transparency and say, no, we're going to allow everyone a chance. So I got to say, I could have gotten more love in the paper when I was running for state rep. I'm just saying. And it didn't quite happen, but it's all good because we're here now.
From the newspaper's perspective, obviously, it's a challenge. As a journalist, you have a spouse who's not only in political office, but running in the neighborhoods that you cover. So it was a unique challenge. And looking back at it, we distinguished ourselves in the way we handled it. We brought on an ombudsman who scrutinized our coverage throughout those campaigns, especially when there was intense competition. It's a very intimate sort of journalism experience.
Yeah.
That's kind of the challenge with local journalism, right? Because you're reporting on your community. Linda, I'm curious to know, how did the reporting of the paper influence your work as a politician?
Absolutely. I mean, the Dorchester Reporter has the pulse of the neighborhood, right? And when you think of Dorchester, Mattapan, right, because that's also part of the paper's catchment area, I mean, they were covering everything that was happening on the ground. To be able to read the paper and see the quotes from the folks, right, from the residents, from the nonprofits and the various organizations that are fighting for particular things was very, very important.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back with more from Bill and Linda Dorcena Forry. Bill, right now, local journalism is pretty important, right? It's a crucial time for local journalism.
It is.
Talk to me about how the Reporter contributed to the Boston that we live in today.
I think in our best moments, we contributed to broadening out the definition of the O-U-R. What does it mean to be a Bostonian? How do we envision ourselves when we think of a Bostonian? I think a lot of people from outside the city have a stereotypical view, and you see that in marketing and advertising all the time. And it tends to be somebody who frankly looks like me with an Irish heritage and kind of an old boy network. But it's much, much broader than that. And I think what we've done in an intentional, deliberate way over 4 decades is to really broaden out even our own understanding and comprehension of what it means to be from Boston, what it means to be from Dorchester. That's been, I think, a contribution that we can rightly point to. And it was an evolution even in our own newspaper and our own approach to how we covered the neighborhood. If you look at the early editions, it was a pretty narrow, scope. Dorchester Avenue was really our focus, the spine of Dorchester Ave. If you open the Reporter today, it's really about the whole neighborhood, including Mattapan. What happens in one section of Dorchester affects all of us. What happens in one section of Boston affects all of us.
Yep.
And when we're struggling in certain sections with violence, poverty, disinvestment, institutionalized forms of racism that are very, very deeply embedded, that does take decades to unpack. It takes decades to approach. And if you do it in a consistent and intentional way, you can move the needle. And I think in some respects we did.
Now, how would you describe the local journalism scene as a whole in the Boston region?
Well, we're fortunate to be in the city core. We're in an urban market. We're in one of the largest markets in the whole country. And we have this, look where we're sitting now on the campus of Boston University. All these universities that are churning out, spawning new talent in the journalism side constantly. Yep. But across the state, it's a different picture. There are definitely news deserts developing. There's a response to that with nonprofit organizations popping up to try to fill the void. Mm-hmm. We're a little bit of an outlier in that we're still one of the only family-owned independent news organizations around now. But it doesn't mean we're the only model or form that can work. There are others that are trying and succeeding, and I think will succeed. As a general rule, yes, there's been a contraction of news variety in terms of outlets. There's been, drastic cuts to newsrooms in other parts of the state. It tends to come from larger hedge fund-owned conglomerates that, personally, I don't think the future there is very bright. Mm-hmm. But I do think that what comes to replace it looks a lot like us. Looks a lot like, locally controlled, people who are embedded in the community, who are authentically from those places, who invest and stick to it over many years.
So this is for both of you. Linda, I'll ask you first. Where do you want to see the paper go in the next 40 years?
I see the paper growing significantly in the next 40 years, in the next 5-10 years, right? That's the hope. But really to make it the hub, right? And I feel it's kind of that already, right? But how do we make sure that everyone who wants to understand our communities here in Boston will pick up the paper? And hopefully our 4 children, we have 4 children now, we're not forcing them to go into journalism or running the paper. So hopefully some of them will have a bug for this. Though
you got 4. You got 4 chances there.
4 chances.
Well, by the time our youngest child, I was her age, I was already knee deep. So I feel like, it happens organically or it doesn't, right?
That's
so
right.
that no pressure. No pressure, kids. Y'all know who you are. But they've all been in and out of the newsroom already. They have a taste for it. But in terms of where we're thinking of going, I mean, Linda's right. We want to continue apace with sort of the impact we have. We're not just a newspaper, and we haven't been for a long time. Obviously, we have a digital footprint. Mm-hmm. We do some multimedia work. We have these amazing partnerships with other organizations like WBUR, which thank you. And we love to see that grow and continue. We're definitely going to lean in on some of our strengths. One of them has been the Haitian community, which, we published a Haitian American community newspaper called the Dorchester Reporter for 15 years. It's suspended publication as print, but it still continues and helps to inform our coverage. And it's a community that really needs a little bit more attention and focused journalism right now. There's a lot of things going on impacting not just the Haitian community, but allies of the Haitian community and the city as a whole with a new influx of migrants and people who are really struggling because of the, inefficiencies of government and some bad decision making. It's a crisis.
It is.
And we're uniquely situated to do that. But we cover all the people in Dorchester. Our mission is to unite the community that way. It's not easily done individually. It has to happen with institutions, and we're one of them that's working and rowing in that direction. So we'll continue to do that.
Understood. Well, before we go, we got to have a toast.
Oh,
all right.
What would we have to toast with, I wonder?
What could it be?
A hyper-local brew?
Yes, it is.
When we knew this anniversary was coming about 9 months ago, we started talking about this, and we have this amazing brand, Dorchester Brewing Company. They're flying the Dorchester name all over the region, and
they are.
We wanted to do something collaborative with them because we're proud of the fact that they're elevating the name Dorchester across the region. So we approached Matt Malloy, who's one of the owners there, and he was all about it. So we designed this can with an artist named Andrew Hooley, who did a great job. Inside the can is what's called Neponset Ale, usually.
That's right,
but this particular version is called The Reporter. And it's our 40th anniversary gift to a lot of our advertisers, sponsors, subscribers, and here to you today.
Well, let's get into it. I started opening a little bit, but let me finish that here.
All right.
All right, we got that beer. Let's pour it out.
Okay, that's a nice pour. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. Nice.
40 years.
40 more.
40 more. Let's hope.
That is good.
Isn't it good? So
that is
good.
Very good.
Yeah.
This is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. That's publishers of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry and Linda Dorcena Forry. And now, it is that time for me to let you know that The Common is produced by Caitlin Harrop and Franny Monahan. It's mixed by Emily Jankowski, Matt Reed, and Paul Vaitkis, and it's edited by Samatha Joshi and Ben Brock Johnson. And our theme music is Me by Hisu. And from the newsroom of WBUR, I'm your host, Daryl C. Murphy. I'll talk to you soon.